Hello, my name is Gilmartin, and we are going to be looking at some of the beginning and intermediate techniques of flamenco guitar. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the history here in the beginning of flamenco, just to give you a feeling of the different kinds of influences that come into play when we're playing flamenco. It helps when you're playing to be thinking about those things, the places that it comes from, and the different cultures that are at play in flamenco. A lot of people say that originally flamenco came from the gypsies, who came from India originally, from eastern India, in the east that is. And these people traveled across, of course, all across Asia and across Eastern Europe and southern Eastern Europe, I guess, and then into Africa and into Spain eventually, and ended up in Spain, where flamenco is actually from, thought to be from these days. But along the way, they picked up a lot of the styles from Morocco and were influenced by the Arabs and by the Jews, and eventually, when they arrived in Europe, by the European harmony. So flamenco really represents a kind of ultimate fusion of East and West, and it's one of the reasons why a lot of people find it very attractive. It has elements in it that are very diverse and draw in a lot of different likes. Over time, after it arrived in Spain and after all these influences had begun to fuse, the Spanish then sent out people who went to South America and brought back some of the styles from South America. And so it was then flamenco began to be influenced by even the Americas in the 19th century, I guess even earlier than that to some degree. And then as the 20th century progressed, obviously many things have come in contact with flamenco. I say obviously because flamenco has always been an open art form. It's always been an art form that accepted its influences and new things. And so jazz has come to play an important role in the harmony, as well as the aesthetic. A little softer sound sometimes, and a greater sense of swing in some ways, though it's certainly not a jazz swing. So that's kind of an overview of the history of the peoples who have influenced flamenco. It continues to be influenced to this day by different new things. I'm going to tell you first about a bunch of Spanish words that I'll be using in the video so that I can speak freely the way we do as flamencos. These Spanish words are not necessary to learn how to play flamenco, but once you know them, it's a lot easier to spend some time with flamenco, both in print, if you're learning from books or reading about it, and with other people, if you're playing it with other people. So the forms, or the styles, the different styles, guajiro, tangos, soleá, these are just the names of the different forms, and the forms themselves are called palo. Palo means the form or song style. So the different palos refer to the different styles. The techniques have their own particular names, and I'll familiarize you with a couple of those. The first one is rasqueo or rasqueado. Originally the word was rasqueado, which is the word that describes that kind of technique, which is various ways of hitting the strings or striking the strings with the backs of your nails, of your fingernails. There are many different kinds of techniques, so I won't define it any more than that, but it's basically the way that they play the chords in that very fiery style. So you can have very fast repetitions of striking of the strings. That's all called rasqueado. Over time, they dropped the hard D and it became rasqueo. So whenever I refer to it, I'm going to be saying rasqueo. The second word is going to be picado. The second technique is going to be picado, which just means what a classical player might refer to as I and M technique, of using the first two fingers, I and M, and alternating them basically always in alternation, going back and forth, and never repeating one finger again and again, but always alternating them. And picado is just the name that the Spanish use for that technique, and it's basically the way that you play the melodies in flamenco. Aire Aire is a very important word to understand, and it just means the feeling. If you were to talk about a flamenco swing or a flamenco feeling, you would always say the aire. And hopefully all flamenco playing has aire. It is kind of a compliment, but it also is sort of the general term for the feeling of flamenco. Compás. The word compás refers to the basic bar or phrase of any palo, of any flamenco rhythm. And so in the tangos that I'm about to play, the compás is in 4/4 and generally consists of 2 bars of 4/4. So let's go to a tango now. I will play you my tangos, and I'll talk more about all that stuff in just a moment. Tangos, again, is in 4/4, and the basic compás, as I talked about before, is very important to understand before you get into playing the melodies. Everything in flamenco falls into the compás, and you must play in compás. That term changes depending on the phrase that you're using. So in tangos, the basic compás consists of basically 8 beats. Some people count it in 4 beats. That's mainly for dancers. But some people do count it in 4. I'm going to count it in 8, and we're going to think of it as a 2-bar phrase. The 2 bars being a call and response, more or less. The first chord being, well, actually, it doesn't matter what the first chord is because it's really a 2-bar phrase and the harmony changes depending. But let's count it together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3. Okay? So you can see that often the phrase ends on 3 in the second bar there. And that's just to kind of give you an idea about the phrase in tangos into which all the melodies that I played and all the phrases that I played fall. Okay? Let's talk first about the harmony in flamenco. And to get you really acquainted with the playing of these styles, it's going to be very important that you stay with the voicings that I show you, at least in the beginning. They create the sound of flamenco. And if you were to just read chord names on a page and play them with the correct rhythms, it wouldn't sound like flamenco. So let's take a look at these chords first of all. I'll say something here that I'll probably repeat a little bit throughout the video, which is that the use of the guitar in flamenco is extremely economical. They've devised ways of playing things that allow for very small movement and very powerful effect. So the chord voicings is a good example of that. The first chord that I'm going to show you is the tonic, or the first, or the one chord of this key, if we can think of it that way, the A major. And I'm just playing it with a small abbreviated bar with the first finger barring two strings, the fourth and the third string, and the second finger playing the second string, the C sharp. So the first finger is fretting the E and A, and the second finger is fretting the C sharp on the second string. And I'll just say that allows you for this third finger to be free here to play the B flat suspension over that, even the B flat and the D over that, and then the open A. The second chord is the B flat chord. And I'll point out that the B flat has two open strings that it's using here. We're using the D, the open D string, and the open E string on top. The B flat is just fretting three strings, or three notes, and that's the B flat on the fifth string on the first fret, the B flat on the third string on the third fret, and the D on the second string on the third fret. And again, it allows for very easy movement back to the A, B flat, A. The third chord that I'm going to show you is the C. Commonly would be thought of as a C9. It does have the D on top, and it's a C7 chord using the B flat here. I think you can all see that chord. It's playing the fifth, fourth, third, and second strings there. And again, it's using the open E on top, and that's important. We always hear that E ringing out on top. Okay? Adding a lot of the tonal color and sound for flamenco. The fourth chord I'm going to show you kind of rounds out the phrase is the D minor. We should all be familiar with the D minor, just a basic D minor voicing. I'm playing it with the fourth finger on the D again, showing how, just showing you that I'm borrowing that note from the other voicings, right? The C7 or C9 and the B flat, sharp 11 you can think of it as, and the A, all using the same note here, the A being the only one that doesn't use the D. So the D minor moves easily to the C, to the B flat, and to the A. The other two chords that are involved in what I just played, the other two harmonic sounds, one of them is F major. It's just a basic F major bar on the first fret, triad. Nothing complicated about that. And the second one is not really a chord, but kind of an extension or a lower extension to the B flat when I use the G in the bass here on the sixth string, which just adds a very sort of deep sound, of kind of a darker sound, and is useful for adding textural differences and different sounds for different moments. Let's talk a little bit more about compás now. The compás often will be comprised of, I'm sorry, the phrases that use the compás where the chords are being used and not the melodies will often be comprised of 4 repetitions of the 2-bar phrase. So you have something that sounds like, you have 2 repetitions of B flat to A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And then you will have just a straight rundown from the D minor back to the A. D minor, C, B flat, A. Sounding like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So then those two put together sound like this. And this would be a good way to play tango compás, so that you have a complete phrase and it sounds like tangos and you sound like you're playing tangos flamenco. And it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I played it correctly that time. The previous time I just sort of gave you a general compás. This one closes. And that close is very important. I showed it to you in the first example of the compás, to end on 3. Okay? And that sort of says this phrase is over and we're going to start another one. Either we're going to start playing a melody or we're going to be playing some other section. So that's the basic compás. I did forget one word that I'm now going to be using a lot in the previous introduction to Spanish section, which is the word falseta. The melodies in flamenco are called falsetas. And that refers really to the melodies on the guitar. Of course, there are melodies on other instruments, and I haven't really heard those referred to as falsetas, but here the melodies are called falsetas. So each one of the melodies that I played there is called a falseta. And let's look first at the introduction falseta. This is something that I've written mostly of my own. It's also sounds like a lot of things that you'll hear in flamenco. And in flamenco, a lot of the music comes from other people. There's a lot of borrowing, and of course there's a lot of traditional melodies, but also amongst the people who are playing today, everyone cross-pollinates. And so I guess this is a little bit of an example of that. My introduction starts off on the D minor chord, and in that sense doesn't really follow what I just showed you about the compás starting from B flat to A. And we basically have a very fast arpeggio of the D minor chord. It happens on the second half of the first beat, leading up to beat 2, I think. Right. So it's on the second half of the first beat. So you play the downbeat 1 on the D string, and then this fast arpeggio, followed by another quick attack with the right finger, with the first finger. And then a pull-off in the left hand. The first finger then plays again on the second string, and then the second finger comes into play, the M finger, and 2 melody notes are played on the high E string. And that phrase repeats over each one of the chords. And is finished with that last note before we go on. So again, it's the melody note, the bass note, which changes from D to C to B flat. But here we are on D minor. C. And on the third chord, we play the same arpeggio and pull-off pattern. But then we finish it out with a 30-second note run, hopefully, picado, I and M, up to the G, going up from the D to the G. So I think I played too many notes there. Right. Okay, so it just adds this little run from D to E to F to G to the end of the previous phrase. And then we slide up to the B flat on the first string, and we play a melody that just plays one downbeat, and then the rest of the notes are on the offbeats. Let's see here. That's right. That's those are upbeat 16th notes. 1 yanda, 2 yanda, 1 yanda, 2 yanda. I'm now going to play the whole thing for you so that you can play along with it. Goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. I gave you a couple of variations there on the B flat chord. The B flat chord, the way I intended to play it, is with 30-second notes sounding like this. Okay, so that's basically the first falsetta. I then, after playing that, I then am free in flamenco to fill in between that falsetta and the next one with as much of a repetition of the compás as I would like. Okay? So that's what I did during the piece. As I get to the end of it, I then just go back into compás. I may do a number of things to take me through the chords from B flat to A a number of times, and then maybe D minor, C, B flat to A. I will often use what's called a llamada. Llamada in Spanish means call, to close a phrase. And it's called a call, I think, mainly because the communication between the different artists, the different musicians, is accomplished through these musical phrases, these little paradigms, these little cliches in flamenco that they play or sing or dance. They create these rhythms. And then everyone knows that you're going to change section, you're going to go someplace else, and that's what I do to close, usually to close this section. I don't really remember if I did it between the first two falsettas or not. But I would do that with the F chord as a substitution for the D minor. Okay? So I'm going to show you how I'll play the end of that falsetta, and then I'll just play 4 repetitions of the 2-bar phrase. The first repetitions will be B flat to A major, B flat to A major, and then I'll play the llamada, which is going to be F major, C, B flat, and I'll close on A. And when I say close, I mean that I'll close the phrase on the beat 3. Okay? So I'm just going to play the end of the introduction falsetta, and then I'll play a couple of bars of compás, just like that. You'll want to notice that a lot of times when I'm playing compás, I do not give a lot of weight to the first beat. I don't play the downbeat 1 very strongly. I may not play it at all. It's not that it's unnecessary, it just adds a great feeling of aire and expectation and swing if you leave that first beat out a little bit. I'll demonstrate that now for you a little bit slower. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 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 1 and 2 and 3. So, let's talk now about some rasgueos, which you'll need to obviously master in order to be able to play these bars of compás that I've just been playing. Rasgueo is by far the most signature sound of flamenco. It's what makes everyone sort of sit up and say, ah, that guy's playing flamenco, or that woman is playing flamenco. And rasgueo, again, is the practice of striking the strings with repeated, very quick repetitions of different fingers striking the strings. And there are many different kinds of rasgueos, and we're going to work with just 2 of them right now, or 3 of them. One of them is, the third one will be a bit of a variation on the second. The first one that I'm going to show you is a very strong rasgueo. It allows you to create a great amount of volume and grab everyone's attention immediately, if you like. And it involves playing these 4 fingers in quick succession. It creates a triplet to a downbeat rhythm. Triplet 1, triplet 1, triplet 1. Okay? So that's what we're going to be working with very slowly. It would be triplet 1 or 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay? I find that the easiest way to practice these rasgueos, and all of the rasgueos in fact, is to begin the practice with 3 different stages of getting used to the new movement, developing the muscles. And these these practice techniques I will suggest are the best ones that I've found for working any rasgueo into your playing repertoire. The first one involves really just doing the rasgueo in the air, away from any surface, certainly away from the strings, away from a table, away from your leg, but in the air. And for the sake of this rasgueo, I'm going to say that we should wrap our fingers actually into the meat of your palm as a starting place, okay? And this is really a training method at first. And then we want to flick out each finger individually of the other fingers as far out and as quickly and as with as much emphasis and force as we can. Counting as we go, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You should feel that there is true definition to your movement. And in the beginning, you may find it difficult to feel that definition. I did, and it took me a while to feel that kind of decisive movement in each digit, okay? But you want to be able to count. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 1 because it's the second half of a beat triplet or 30-second note triplet. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. When I actually play this rasgueo, I don't end up actually digging my nails into the meat of my palm anymore because I don't need to get that very emphatic feeling in the movement. But in the beginning, that's very helpful for starting out. I would advise that you do that one do this for at least a couple of minutes as one is warming up, especially in the beginning, just to get the motion of the muscles working. You can run in, I ran into a little bit of difficulty in the beginning trying to play the rasgueos right away on the strings. And you can avoid this kind of problem by doing these other exercises that involve playing without the guitar at first. The strings have different tensions, and so when you're playing on them right away, it can be hard to develop your muscles and the strength and emphatic movement or decisive movement that you need to create a very even tone if you start practicing on the strings right away. So that's the first method, is out away from you, okay? The second one is playing on a flat surface. And for this, you need to plant your thumb on the flat surface. It can be your leg, it can be a tape case, it can be a CD case. Those make nice sounds. It could be really anything, but something that's flat, preferably, and allows you to have a target that you can hit. That's one target, as opposed to with the strings where you're dealing with a number of different targets that are moving and vacillating and with different tensions. And it's basically the same thing. Wrap your fingers into the meat of your palm and try and develop something that you really feel is a very decisive movement in each finger. And again, if you were to practice 2 minutes of the free out in the air and 2 minutes of this before playing guitar, I think I found that was the quickest way to work new rasgueos into my repertoire. The third way that I would practice these is with the left hand muting the strings, just holding the strings down, which is a necessary technique in playing flamenco. We're going to get to that in a minute at some point in any event. And so you mute the strings so that you're not worried about the chords, and at least they provide a little bit more of an even kind of response across the different strings if they're not being fretted in different places but are all muted. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. I will tell you that these fingers are referred to in flamenco technique as E, A, M, and I. Okay? So if you are familiar with those or most of those from classical guitar or playing Brazilian guitar or playing any kind of guitar where you had to learn that these fingers had letters associated with them, it may be useful for you to be saying the names of the finger for you while you're doing it and connecting in your mind the finger to the movement E, A, M, I, E, A, M, I, E, A, M, I, E, A, M, I. So we notice that that there's a very even kind of attack to that. What I want when I play rasgueos is the ability to create a very, very accurate rhythmic impression. A lot of flamenco requires you to use things that are rhythms that are varied. They're not metronomic a lot of times in the playing. So it's very nice to be able to juxtapose a metronomic use of a rasgueo with a non-metronomic one, okay? Where you might hear something that goes, and then something that goes, okay? There's a bit of an accelerando in the second one, right? It speeds up at the end. Okay? So that's more important with other rasgueos, but we want to be very attentive to a very even rhythmic playing in the beginning. So again, practicing with very slowly at first, and with great attention to a sense of real definition in the movement. The thumb of the right hand can be rested very heavily on the sixth string. A lot of times you'll see flamenco players playing and you'll see them do things like that. And that's totally natural. Sometimes you'll be stopping other strings, etc. But it allows you to really get into the guitar and drive the strings with a lot more force. So don't be afraid to let the weight of the hand weigh on that sixth string. It doesn't need to bend it a whole lot, but planting it firmly on the sixth string will help you to get a good solid feeling. The second rasgueo that I'm going to talk about is called abanico, which means fan. And there's a number of reasons that I've thought about that it might be called fan. One of them being that it looks sort of like the movement that the dancers use when they are using their fans in the dances. And they flutter the fans about. And it's sort of the same movement here. And it's important to think about that a little bit because, again, I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of work away from the guitar, or suggest that it might be easier for you if you start out by practicing away from the guitar, just getting a really loose movement, okay? And of course we're gonna control it little by little over time, but it really is a very, very loose flow, a real whipping of the hand that's needed in the abanico. The difference, one of the main differences between these two rasgueos is that the first one uses a very fixed hand position where you can deliver a rapid fire repetition of the fingers to play. The second one uses a twist of the wrist, you might say. I think of it as really a rotation of the forearm more than just a twist of the wrist, though I think it's really both. Okay, because I do use a little bit of an arch in the wrist in the right hand, especially in this technique. So you just want to get real comfortable. Make sure that when you're trying this flicking of the wrist and this flailing about of the right hand in your abanico training, that you want to see that this finger can really fly away. It's not being held. If you see that your hand is being held at all, or you sense any stiffness, try and just let the fingers go and try as a beginning place to just really flop the fingers around. You're going to need to feel that kind of freedom with your hand if you want to get a good sound with this abanico. All of the rasgueos in flamenco use the weight of the hand more than we do in classical technique or Brazilian technique. So you want to also be very aware of that when we're striking the strings, we're not trying to strike the strings with the thumb and then the fingers and then another finger, but we're really using the weight of the hand and really the weight of the arm right behind that strike, okay? And we'll be looking a lot at the thumb later on, and you'll see that even if it's making very small movements, we want the movement of the arm behind it. So all those things considered, make sure you really can get a nice free flopping of the hand. The abanico consists of an upstroke with the thumb, and then a downstroke with the thumb. And those are separated by a downstroke with these two middle fingers, M and A. The upstroke happens on the first part of the beat, the downstroke on the third part of the beat. This is again a triplet rhythm. So we have something, I'm just going to play the thumb strokes alone, and this is the easiest way that I've found to learn this abanico, is to start out by counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then playing just on the first part with an upstroke on the thumb and the third part with a downstroke on the thumb. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. We usually finish with an upstroke so that you have the first beat of the next beat, the downbeat happen 1, 2, 3, 1. In between these up and down strokes with the thumb comes these two middle fingers, which fly out straight. You want to be careful that the movement, the twist of the wrist, happens with the thumb and not with the fingers. Okay? So I'm going to count now very slowly. These fingers are always going to be on 2. The upstroke with the thumb is always going to be on 1, and the downstroke with the thumb is always going to be on 3. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The third Ra scale that I'm going to talk to you about now is a variation of the abanico, which I used. Actually, let me just demonstrate those two Ra scales together now. These two Ra scales work very well together. These first two Ra scales work very well together because they use the same rhythm, but they create completely different sounds. So you can have juxtaposed bars or juxtaposed whole sections where you're using one and then the other. Very effective, and I advise, all people advise, I think it best that I always work in variations in my rasgueos. Okay? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So you can see that by using different rasgueos at different moments, you can create great tension and interest in the music. To that point, the third rasgueo is a variation of the abanico that I use mostly when the tempo picks up a little bit, or I want to just raise the blood pressure a little bit, I might say, raise the level of excitement for just a moment, or even as we're ending a piece to speed up the accelerando at the end. And the difference is that instead of having the final upstroke to finish the abanico, we end with the downstroke of the thumb. So it has only 3 beats in it, but it turns into a 16th note rhythm, or based on a 16th note rhythm at the end of a beat. So you have up, down with the 2 fingers, and then just down with the thumb. Okay? So let me show you a little bit of that. I'll play the first half of a 2-bar phrase with the regular abanico, and then I'll switch to the other one. So I'll just play B flat in A with the first abanico, and the second one I'm going to play with this abbreviated one, and I'll just show you the rhythm a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay? This is very useful when the speed picks up and you can't get that last upstroke with the thumb to occur as easily without going into a sort of a roll with the abanico, which we'll get to in just a moment. As you start to speed up, those are all the same variation of the abanico, meaning up with the thumb, out with the finger, and then down with the thumb. I'm doing it on every beat, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I ended with a full abanico with an upstroke, ending on 3. The roll, the abanico roll, where you just start to repeat the abanico again and again and again and again and again until you get to the beat where you want to be and you end with an upstroke, is a very, very nice rasgueo to end a phrase with. One of the main reasons that I like it is because it's very easy to create a nice crescendo with it, okay? You can start very softly, play something very light, and then just build into a really powerful sound. Something like this. if you can hear the beats in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay? So you can practice the abanico with one chord eventually, after you've done a good deal of making sure that you really have a nice loose hand, and then start by practicing with the up, down, up, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then try it with the chords, and you can get to a place where you can practice the very fast closing abanico. I'm going to say something about nails here, fingernails, false or real. Over time, the flamencos have developed quite a love for their fingernails and quite a technique for building them up, because a lot of people's fingernails are not built strong enough in their own bodies to withstand the abuse or the beating that they take when you're playing flamenco guitar. So they have, the gypsies, I think, are the ones who first came up with this process. It was certainly how I learned it from someone who had been living with the gypsies, of building up the nails with false, with other materials. The first one that I was exposed to, and I think the oldest one that I've heard of, is just using real silk, the material silk, cut into shapes, obviously, that would be amenable to the shape of the nail, and what used to be known as crazy glue. We used to use crazy glue. It was a lot more painful then. You don't have to do that anymore. You can use nail glue. And instead of promoting one nail glue or the other, I will just say that most pharmacies provide you with a number of good nail glues. There are good dispensers that allow you to stay very clean and have a nice application of just the amount that you want, just the right spot, and all that kind of stuff. I use false nails that are basically pre-built. I use clear ones. And I've become quite adept at cutting them into the right shape and filing them off and making them playable. I used silk for a long time. There are some people who swear by it. It does have a different tone. Ping pong balls are also used as a material from which to cut the shapes. So you can take a ping pong ball and cut out the shape of your nail. People in all different styles of music have used these different substitutes for natural nails, and they do make your playing a little bit more regular, in the sense that if you break a nail, as they say, if you lose a nail, you can always just make another one, as opposed to waiting a few weeks for one to grow out. The reason that I bring this up now is because the rasqueos, and especially the abanico, are notorious for the places where the nails are going to be most affected. And it's not necessary that you have nails right away, that you go out and build nails or grow your nails real long. Hopefully you have some nails from playing other kinds of guitar already, perhaps. But you can practice a lot of the movement and a lot of the strengthening of the hand and even the rhythms to a great degree without having real strong nails. One can begin practicing this stuff right away and get most of the work done before you ever touch the guitar, as I pointed out. But before you have strong nails, at least, you can obviously play the guitar without strong nails as well, and begin to get a feeling for the kind of work you're going to need to do to play these rasqueos. The second melody, the second falsetto that I played is a falsetto that I've heard was introduced to flamenco repertoire by Sabicas. Sabicas, if you don't know the name, you might want to check that out. He's one of the great players from the last century, from the 20th century, and he died in the 80s, I believe. And he lived in New York for many, many years. And I have had the pleasure of studying with a few people who studied with Sabicas. And of course, I've been exposed to a lot of the Sabicas music on CD and through other people as well, but also through these two people who I've studied with. They've taught me a number of the melodies from him, from his repertoire. And this second melody comes from Sabicas. I actually learned it out of a book by Juan Serrano as well. The two people with whom I've studied who spent some time with Sabicas are Bernard Schaller and Dennis Koster. And Dennis has taught me an awful lot about the techniques that are necessary to really affect a good sound. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that right now before I actually show you the melody. Picado, the melodic passages that are played with the technique called picado, is although it's very similar to classical technique, there are some big differences. In order to affect a real good flamenco tone, there are some things that you need to pay attention to. A couple of them are common amongst different styles. The first one being that we really want to think about engaging the tension of the string. We really want to get in nice and deep on the string. We don't want to just be sort of brushing aside of it. Although the brushing motion is also important to stay aware or think about, because we really want this first joint of the finger to be flexible and bending backwards, like the brushes, the bristles on a brush. Okay? So we want that to be happening every time we play a string. The finger goes through that bending back process. Okay? The first thing being the tension, engaging the tension of the string, so pushing the string back towards the face of the guitar, and then letting the first joint of that finger really relax and bend backwards like the bristles on a brush. Two things that are really, I think of as things that I learned after I became acquainted with flamenco and are important for creating a good picado flamenco picado, are playing very perpendicular to the string. Okay? I'm going to demonstrate to you this first bit of the melody played at an angle that's a little bit more 45 degrees, or coming at an angle to the string this way, as opposed to playing more perpendicular. If you play at this angle here, you can get a very nice warm tone. Okay? And if you then play at perpendicular, even without moving position here between the sound hole and the bridge much, if you just go to perpendicular, you can get a much brighter, faster tone. The second thing, which will help a lot, is moving closer to the bridge. So keeping a nice perpendicular attack on the string, pretty much a right angle, and then moving closer to the bridge will give you a good, allow you to approximate a good picado sound. I wanted to say one thing about the flamenco guitar, the guitar itself, the instrument. The guitar that I'm playing here is what's referred to as a negra. It's called negra because it has a dark wood on the back and sides. The top is a lighter wood, as you can see, and the woods that are used in flamenco create the sound, a lot of the sound that you get from flamenco guitar. Usually they are a good deal lighter, meaning the weight is lighter and they're often thinner. They're cut thinner, and even the woods themselves are just a lighter wood, and it creates the possibility of getting a real drum kind of response from the notes and from the different sounds you get out of your guitar. We tap the guitar, we play the strings muted and stuff, and of course the notes themselves. You get a very fast response from the notes. For those of us who are familiar with playing classical and flamenco guitars back to back, the classicals are a lot rounder sound. A lot of flamencos originally were all blonde. They were all light wood, so the sides and back would usually be made of cypress. And they're called blondes, actually. It's called a blonde guitar as opposed to a negra. This is a negra. Black, meaning black in Spanish, negra. Flamenca negra or guitarra negra. So the tops are usually spruce or cedar. Spruce or cedar. This is a Sitka spruce top. The necks are often made of cypress, and all the woods differ just a little bit. Not all of them, but most of the woods differ just a little bit from the classical guitars. The classical guitar is the closest cousin to the flamenco of the guitar family. The fretboard is often made of a very hard wood. Most people think that it can only be ebony, and most of them are ebony, and that's the best wood to use. It's the most stable. You can also use other woods, though. There's a caboclo wood that works, and there are a few other real hard woods. I'll just say one thing about the classical guitars. You're usually looking for a rosewood back and sides. That's the most desirable wood. It has the most beautiful grains with many different colors in it often, and it creates a great tone. The flamenco guitar differs in a couple of other ways. A lot of times you can get a nice buzz out of the strings. You can play very nice soft tones, maybe not even using the nail sometimes. But then you can also really dig in and get a little buzz out of the strings. I'm not getting much of a buzz there, but you can hear a little tiny bit of buzz where the string actually hits the fret. And that's actually part of the flamenco sound. It's desirable, and so we aim for that in a hot moment. And you may juxtapose, two different phrases. Playing one very, and then where you're using the buzz of the frets to really bring out a different kind of on top, that kind of sound. The only other thing that I'd like to mention is that the strings are not made of steel; they're nylon strings. And these three here are wound, obviously, with metal, and these three are nylon, just pure nylon. These have nylon in the middle of them. They're all nylon strings. And it creates a very different sound from the steel string guitar. In a lot of ways, we're handicapped as flamenco or classical players because the volume is just nothing like what you can get out of a steel string guitar, especially a nice big dreadnought. So you are working with less volume inherently in the instrument, even though the flamenco has a little bit more volume, depending on the instrument, than some classicals do. The second falsetta of the tangos, as we were talking about, uses the picado sound, and we want to be sure that we're getting a nice flamenco picado. It's only important to be able to make the picado sound like a flamenco picado, because then after you can do that, you can choose. Do I want a little bit of a warmer sound or a little bit of a brighter sound, a little bit more of a flamenco sound? Okay? So the beginning of each one of the phrases for this falsetta are short picado sections followed by a very fast rasgueo. And I will now demonstrate to you these small melodies. I can imagine running into trouble with some of these melodies, and have in the past, because of awkward finger combinations and at the string crossings. Okay, so you want to become aware of what finger you're starting with, and which finger allows you, when you start with that finger, the phrase is most comfortable for you. Which finger allows you to be most comfortable? So in this first one, I start with the M finger, and of course we're always alternating, and the rhythm is followed by a short rasgueo. Okay. Second one. The third one. The second and third melodies, I like to start with the I finger. First one with M. Second one with I. Third one with I. The string crossings are really a question of taste. You basically want to always have the I finger playing the lower string and the M finger playing the higher string, okay? But there are going to be times when you can't avoid doing the opposite. So you'll have to just experiment with that and find out how it's most comfortable for you. For our purposes, I will just show you one brief demonstration of the other rasgueo that I'm using here, which is a variation of the first one that I showed you, which uses these four fingers in succession. This one just uses these three, okay? And it should be practiced in the three ways that I showed you. First in the air, then on a flat surface, and then on the muted strings. The end of this rasgueo, you play the three fingers, and then the I finger plays twice by itself. It plays an upstroke and then another downstroke. This is a 16th note rhythm or a 32nd note rhythm, very fast. You can make it very fast anyway. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You'll notice that I pulled in all my fingers when I go with the upstroke with the I finger. Okay? This is another use of economy, a very good economical use of the hand and motion, so that when you come up with the I finger, the hand closes and then the I finger plays alone for the downstroke, the final downstroke. 1, E, and 2. On the strings, real nice secure grasp with the thumb on the 6th string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, E, and 2. 1, E, and 2. 1, E, and 2. In fast succession, you can tie these together by leaving out the final downstroke of the I finger. So you have 1, E, and 2, E, and 3, E, and 4, E, and We don't do that in this falsetta, but it's certainly possible. So then the final one would have the final outstroke with the I finger to finish off the phrase. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and I'll just point out that you need to be very aware of what strings you're playing with your rasgueos as well, as it creates very different textures and really, really deep, different kinds of feelings, okay, in flamenco. In this falsetta, we're playing mostly the top 3 strings. Okay? On the B flat chord, on the last chord, I am playing more in the middle. I'm getting the 5th string and the 3rd and the 2nd. You'll hear that I'm really not playing that top string at all, though. Right? And it just creates a much greater sense of textural variety. The first chord, you can play just the 2 or top 3 strings maybe, or maybe all 4. On the C, maybe you start playing the 5th string, or maybe just the 4th, and then the B flat, getting a little deeper, so that you really get a shape in the phrase, okay? And that's something that'll come over time. When you gather strength, you'll be able to really aim for different sets of strings. The end of this falsetta is a triplet rhythm that you've probably noticed is a pretty difficult one to just grab quickly. But it involves some pull-offs, and another very typical flamenco sound is this sound where you play some strings, you may even bend them a little bit and get a little bit of a detuning going on, and then you pull off from there with the left hand. So this is just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Those are the first 2 beats of the last bars of this falsetta. And of course, you're starting with the B flat chord, kind of. You're not using the B flat here in the bass. You're just starting on the 4th string with the F, B flat, and D, respectively, on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. And then you play all 3 strings with the thumb stroke, and then you pull off to the first finger on the E, and then the open D. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The 3rd beat uses a pull off from E to D, and then a quick strike again on the 5th string for the C. And then you'll need to stretch up and let go of the other strings. Stretch up with the 4th finger and play the D on the 5th string for the final triplet. D, C, B flat, and then A. Sounding like this. And here's the introduction, our first introduction in this video to a ubiquitous technique, a technique you find everywhere in flamenco and creates another extremely characteristic sound of flamenco, which is the very fast repetition of the thumb stroke, down stroke with the thumb. And it happens right here when we get to this C, D, C, and then C, D, I think is what it is. Right, so we have 2 of them. We have so C, D is a repeated thumb stroke, very fast repeated thumb stroke, and then B flat, A. Both of them are very important because they lead to the next downbeat, okay? If you leave them out, you can play the notes, but you get a very sort of a wishy-washy kind of rhythm sound. And so you need to play those very fast repeated thumb strokes. And I've found that in order to do that, it's most easy to count while you're learning these falsettas, count them out meticulously, know exactly what the rhythm is, and be able to play them and count them at the same time. This may take some time with certain falsettas that are very complicated, but once you can do that, you can then lock in a much greater sense of rhythmic security, which flamenco plays with in a playful manner in some places, and in some places they're very strict. So, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. So that's 3, 1, 3, 1, right? The last part of the triplet and the beginning part of the next one. I'll play the whole falsetta now for you a little bit slower, so you'll have a picture of it. I always will start off with a little bit of compás just before I play a falsetta.